Hello everybody. So we're here to talk about Lemontree Toys Purple Potato. It's a fine figure. I really enjoy it. Had a really clever transformation design, nice aesthetics, good materials and build. It's basically the opposite of X-Transbot's Lock. I'm never going to let that go. So there he is. He looks pretty good. He comes across on this camera a little bluer. He is definitely like a great grape ape purple. Like he is purple. But these cheaper cameras don't pick up on the nuances of purple or red very well. And so he comes across as kind of blue in this video. I mean, I could try to change the white balance or something. I don't know. 44.98. Saturation. I mean, if I bring the saturation up, he just gets bluer and bluer and bluer. I mean, he is supposed to be purple. To the eye, he is purple. To the rest of the universe, he is he shows up as blue on this. Well, he's going to have to be kind of blue, but I'll show you how to transform him anyway. Mine was actually missing a finger, so I put in my request to have that replaced. He did come with a few other accessories. He came with a couple of screw hole fillers. I'm not quite sure where they are or where they go, but I figured it wasn't a big deal. But it's a little screw hole cap. Here's his hand. This wasn't the one actually missing a finger, but the fingers are symmetrical, so I switched the missing finger to the hand that I'm not going to be using as much. It does come with a second gun, so you can replace both hands with guns, I guess, if you want to. It comes with this, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is like a mounting bracket for his crotch. Let's see if it plugs in. No, it doesn't. I don't know what the hell it is. It's something. And he came with a couple of blast effects that plug in together and plug into the gun. And now he's shooting. Now he's shooting his gun. This is also like a livid, like a very purple, and it comes across as blue, of course, on this camera. And he comes with a fairly flimsy, cheap display stand, but it works. You actually saw glimpses of it in the video, but it's a display stand for the vehicle mode. It's a really fun idea. It's, of course, Shockwave, except they can't call them Shockwave because of copyright restrictions. And it turns into Megatron's ship, or Galvatron's ship from the movie, from the '86 cartoon. It was actually called the Revenge. So I guess Galvatron was getting revenge for being an asshole and killing Prime. I don't know what he's getting revenge for. But let's get him transformed, guys. What we're going to do is remove the gun. It just pegs onto the same peg that the hand pegs onto. And unplug this from here. This is a spring. It doesn't have the retaining like nylon line that the Masterpiece Shockwave has. So you could get this thing severely out of order by pulling on it too hard. But it does the job. So first we're going to flip up these flaps on the shoulders. You can kind of get them to come up anyway by just manipulating the shoulder. But this comes up and I like to face it forward like that. Same thing over here. There we go. The hand just goes into like karate chop mode to be stowed away in a minute. So this part flips open. It's on a bit of a double hinge, so it has a little more give. And then this part flips open and out. And there's a little flap that gets pushed out. And you want that flap to be overextended so it's sticking up completely for now. We can put the hand away. I wasn't real clear on that in the video because it was kind of facing away from you, but the hand just goes into the forearm, no big deal. There we go. Goes in there. And then this flap closes, and this time it closes flush. There's actually a little bit of a gap before. You can see it here. There's a gap. And then this tab goes over top of the tab there. And this actually extends for vehicle mode for whatever reason. Just going to do the same thing over here real quick like. It didn't come with the little these things assembled. They actually, when the hand is halfway, it's just real easy to put this in there, and then these from the other side, you can pull this thing completely out and have it fly across the room and lose it. But it just goes in like that. So we're just going to flip this one around as if it was a hand, but it's not. And we close this. We have to make sure we hyperextend the flap. And then we close this. And then we close the flap. Now we're ready for the next steps. We're going to flip open these panels. You can get a good grip on it just by fingernailing under this edge. In the other direction, there's not quite as much of a place to grab it from, but I'm going to put these back in because I missed something. I feel like this should be up for robot mode because it kind of gives them a proper wasp waist. You do have to flip these down in order to open those panels properly because they need to be out of the way. This is just tabbed on. It's if you overextend this, if I bend it, then it can pop off of that. There's no pin. Just so when you grab it, just try to squeeze it a little bit when you grab it so that you don't flex it in that direction. You want to flex it in this direction so that it stays tabbed together. It's a little easier than having to like wrestle the piece back on. But just going to do the same thing over here. Just going to lower it down. Now we're going to open these flaps up. They open up further without that stuff in the way. So there we go. And then this kind of flips up and lays flat inside the armature. These come forward, and actually I've got this I've got the torso tabbed together so tight because it is a bit of a challenge to get it tabbed that these actually don't open all the way, so I'm just kind of untabbing the torso a little bit to give those more space. But these come forward and they have to slide down. I find they slide down best when they're about 45 degrees. But you just kind of jiggle it and walk it down. There's basically, it's mounted on a rod. And you can see a little wear and tear because it's a metal armature rubbing on a plastic rod. So it creates a little bit of scuffing on the rod, but I don't think it's a big deal. Give you a view you didn't get in the video, unfortunately. These don't come completely together yet. You have to collapse the arm joint in, and then they're centered. I mean, you can kind of see it doing that in the stop motion video, but I didn't get a really good angle for that. It's pretty obvious though when you're doing it, when you have it in hand, so I don't feel too guilty about it. Once you do that, you can flip up these panels and try to remember them, because a lot of times you'll go to get a grip on this part of it and you'll pop the panel in, and then you'll have to open this up and flip the panel out again. It'll drive you nuts. And so if you try to keep it in mind, I'm going to discuss it, and I'm going to try to keep it in mind, and I am inevitably going to push those panels in while I'm transforming it. But let's see if I can beat the odds and not do that. So that's set. It's so easy to forget because it's like a good place to grip it, except for the fact that it's a panel. But getting this thing to sit all the way down is a bit of a push. In fact, if you see in the stop motion video, it isn't all the way down, and then by the time I turn it back around, it is, because I was like, oh, it's not all the way down. But with that loose, this part just basically, you have to untab the backpack, and then you can flip this thing forward. And I'm pushing those panels again. So just fix it later. Like, you know, accept that the panel's going to get pushed and just fix it later. All right. So that's the backpack. I like to Push it back like that. This rises up out of the cavity here and then walks outward. Same thing over here, of course. And then there's a little flap here that you can flip down that's, you know, kind of covers things up a little bit. But I just kind of like to leave those, get them nice and vertical, but just leave them alone for now. I've got a little scuffing on this because at first I actually had to like stick my pocket knife between the crack here because it's a tight. But it's loosened up over time, so I can usually separate it without help, but for the sake of brevity, the top separates easier than the bottom. Oh, there we go. So these separate. And then we got to do the leg dance. Yeah, you want to turn the waist around 180 degrees. And you want to walk. There's like a little double joint here. You want to walk that up. And then this whole thing, the hips flip up. So your goal is you want it to be like this. For those of you taking pictures, here's your big chance. Anyway, so then this is ultimately going to go like this, but we can just leave it flopping for now. Now is a perfectly good time to go ahead and get the base. At least for my stop motion video, it was handy to have the base in place. Basically these go, one of these actually has a tab that goes into that tab hole there, so we can just do that one first. There we go. And we can put the display stand on. You do have to kind of take this thing apart to put on the display stand, so it just helps to go ahead and do it. And then this one collapses up the same way, and we can tab it together here. It's a real tight tab in the front, like I said, so I wouldn't try to jerk it apart because you can break joints that way, but I don't know. Obviously the flip side is to mar the surface there a little bit to try to pry it apart. You decide which poison you want. So that's all set. And now we're ready to deal with the legs. Probably the most challenging part is to deal with the legs, but they're really not too bad once you understand where everything goes. You can flip out these skirts. They do have to be this far forward later on. And then, of course, these skirts flip completely down. Like that. And then we can go ahead and lay the legs down in this direction. So it looks like this from the top. Eventually, these are going to go like that. You can see they leave a little room for the skirts in the process. The leg is symmetrical, so it's built with the same sort of flap on the hips, but the rear flap, you don't have to really deal with that at all. It's the front flap you need to get out of the way for later. It's scary because it's like a little ball peg, and you don't want to twist it. I like to bring it up a little bit and then fold it like 45 degrees, and then just want to make sure I don't twist the plastic of that ball peg in the process. It's a little tight. I've also found that like you might think you want to keep it nice and aesthetic and flat and straight, but it's actually better if it compresses down a little bit so the tab isn't sticking up. Works better. And we can keep the legs spread a little bit for now while we're doing the lower legs, which is the challenge here, but not too bad. So we're going to rotate the legs inward, pigeon-toed, and then we're going to start untabbing it. There is a tab here that it tabs into like the winglet. Just want to make sure we release that properly first. Let me change my lighting. Someone will bitch about it anyway. So flip this up, and you just have to kind of work both out. This actually tabs across, So it does have a tab. One has a tab and one has a peg because the two actually go together ultimately. But we just want to get that out of the way, and we want to get this out of the way. You just want to be careful with it. It's, you know, a fairly delicate little ball joint. It'll pop out if you're not careful. Not a big deal if it pops out, but you don't want to bend the plastic in a direction that it don't go. So just kind of work it out and then send it over there out of the way. Flip this down, and then you can flip out, kind of spread the leg, but you want to flip out this bit, and it goes into kind of a groove there, and it settles in. It's shaped a little bit like the mast here, the winglet, but it really does go under it. It doesn't mate with it. It goes under it. So it goes like that. Putting the legs in properly is one of the biggest challenges to getting it to stitch together later. And so I'd like to make some special notes regarding that. We're going to flip the heel up, rotate the sole of the foot around, and then put the heel back. We want to flip this up and flip it around. But we want to make sure that this thing is sent that direction. It probably doesn't matter which way. You could probably turn it around 180 degrees and you'd still be fine. But of course you want this joint to be very flat. And then when you set this thing, you might be tempted to like shoot for like a perfect 90-degree bend when you're done putting this away. This will actually prevent you from stitching it together successfully later. So I tried to showcase on the video so anyone that paused it could see what kind of angle I've gotten. But we do bend this a little bit, and then we bend this to about just past 45 degrees is our goal. So you can see here it actually ends up kind of parallel to this bit of plastic here. So it's at a slight angle. It needs to be at a slight angle, otherwise it won't stitch together properly. And then you do want to adjust the foot a little bit until it kind of sits flat at that angle. So we want it to be nice and flat on the inside surface. Stand this thing back up again. So now we can put this leg away. It's easier to do this one first for various reasons, but we're just going to bend around at the knee. We have the leg splayed out a little bit, so it's going to become unsplayed as we tuck it in. And this goes in front. That goes in front of the top of the thigh. And so now it's all smushed in. The problem with the foot is if you try to line it up the other way, this ends up being pushed out too far this way. Nothing you can do about it at that point. And then you can't get this part to tab in, and it just drives you nuts. So that's why you have the foot at a slight angle and not at 90 degrees. We're going to do the same thing. Let's get that out of the way for now. Do the same thing over on this foot. I'm going to untab this bit. Now you notice I actually showed both legs separately because they are asymmetrical. This leg, the back of the potato, is by itself on the flap, and this is on the other flap. And on the other one, this is here and with the potato flap. It's just kind of the way it works out. So I did show the transformation of each leg individually because they are a little bit different. I'm not quite sure what this flap is for. You could probably not even touch it, but it kind of covers up the top of the leg where the knee is. We're going to flip this around. We're going to get this situated. We just want to get leverage to turn this sideways. So perfectly sideways. And then we can situate the leg, the foot. And like I said, it just needs to, the foot needs to be tweaked a little in this direction so it'll sit flat. And then we're sitting this at an angle. And that angle kind of matches the tip of this purple detail there. This flap, this vein. All right. See, and you got to be careful with that, like I'm not. Because it does only sit, it only rotates over when you're at the 90 degree, basically. So just be careful with it. More careful than I am. So now we're going to start collapsing this leg in. Just being careful, this is going to try to pass underneath, so we need to make sure that we don't push it into something and crack it off. We're flipping this one around. We need to make sure that this front skirt flap is forward so that the leg can go in here. So those go together. Just arranging these to keep them out of each other's way. And now we're squeezing the whole thing, getting it to kind of pop the various joints, that one extra click that brings everything close together. Now there is a tab here. It's a hook tab. It's how do I, you can see it there, it's pointing up. It's hooking up. So you do want to pass this part of the leg over it and then kind of press down on it to get it to catch that hook. There's a similar hook on the bottom, but I don't seem to ever have to pay as much attention to it. I want to make sure these are tabbed together. And if you find that there's a little bit of a gap here, not a big deal. But if you find there's a big gap, then you done screwed up the feet, because they will prevent that from closing properly. We're going to take these knee pads and just kind of translate them into the middle. We're going to make sure that this flap stays tabbed. Going to spread these things out nice and even. So that they're like that. This one as well. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. Let's put it down. There we go. And then these rotate around like that. Same thing on the other side. There's little angled tabs that plug in, and they surprisingly contribute quite a bit to the structural integrity of this whole thing. When you tab them together, they kind of hold the thing together. But it makes me nervous because those weak little, knobs, those little stems. So try not to put too much stress on them in the process. Those two pop together. So we're getting real close now. I forgot to put the head away, so let's do that real quick. This flips out. It helps to flatten the ears just a little bit. And then you flip the head over. And then you can put this back. All right, and now this lines up here, and this lines up here. This comes in here. And these two tab holes actually correlate to two tabs under the cockpit area. So we're just bringing that in, and we want to tab the cockpit in. Assuming it'll let us, Just want to make sure that comes in nice and flat. And then the cockpit tabs in. And it like I said, if you got one side kind of popping loose, you may not have the feet quite right. So get the feet right. Get those ankles straight. So these flip up, bring them down. I had to kind of remember which way I wanted things to point, but I want these to point up, and then I wanted them to point backwards. And they can just kind of get out of the way so you can do the rest of the figure. But we're going to robot. We're going to vehicle mode here. These actually slide in and they do tab. They're real hard to do at first. They get a little easier the more you kind of wear it. But you can see the tabs there, and they get plugged in. The whole thing kind of lies flat, as flat as you can make it. You flip out these little winglets, flip these over and up, and extend the antenna on the front, and you got yourself, Galvatron's spaceship, the Revenge. I heard a story that it was supposed to be like this, but I don't think that looks as good. I like the upward sweep of the nacelles instead of a downward sweep. So I think this looks more right. There's a little thing down here at the bottom that flops around. That was good. And that's it. There's nobody watching. I am talking, right? Yeah, I'm talking. I don't know. I'll say hello. And I think I won't transform him back because I think I will display him for a little while as the Revenge. It's kind of cool looking. You can see this this went in, so you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it. There we go. Pretty dope though. It's nice to have like the spaceship from the movie, Galvatron spaceship. And you know, in true Transformer spirit, it actually does transform. And if you could see how purple this thing is, you would realize it makes perfect sense for an incredibly purple spaceship to turn into an incredibly purple character like Shockwave. But it's pretty clever how they did that. The legs, the way the legs turn into this cylindrical spheroid might have been inspired by the way was it KFC or whoever handled their Galvatron. But DX9? I don't know. I don't know who did that Galvatron. It's a pretty good figure. I like her. Just remember what I said about doing the ankles just so, because it leaves the proper clearance for this thing to tab together. The symptom, if you don't do it again, is these tend to be a little more split, and it's really, really hard to get any of them tabbed in properly. Because then you're really relying on these tabs to kind of pull everything together against those ankles that you left in the wrong position. So if it doesn't hold easily in this position, then chances are you tried to make the ankles too vertical inside the cylinder. And that's it. That's all I got to say, I guess. I don't know. I'll transform this thing again. Hell with it. The hell with it. Give me something to do. He is a pretty good Shockwave also. So we flip these down. We extract these from there. Straight out, down. They actually do tab there. And then we point them backwards and flop them down out of the way. Same thing here. Bring it down, tab it in, point it backwards, out of the way. There we go. And then we can untab this bit. Sometimes it helps to get a little something under there to get it started. But we're just flopping the nose down. We can get rid of these antennas whenever we find convenient. Like now. Flop these down out of the way. Ready to start working on the legs. Helps to have like a little bit of a tool here to try to separate the butt. And you do want to separate out the tabs. And you got to know where they are, because you don't want to try to separate something that's one of these ball joint armatures. You want to separate where the actual tabs are. So if it helps to know, they're directly on the top and directly on the bottom. Put that on tabs. And likewise this one down here on tabs. There we go. And these rotate out of the way. We can go ahead and put the knee joints where they're supposed to be, or the knee pads. There we go. We start separating the legs. Remember we got that little hook tab there? We can start bringing them out. Go ahead and flip this leg around. Just make sure that you're not letting this collide with anything, because it's fairly delicate, you can see, especially this part of it. But we just want it to go underneath. There we go. And we bring out the foot. We have to straighten it slightly. It helps to kind of fold it a little bit to give yourself leverage to rotate this other joint. So it rotates the foot out like that. And then we can bring the foot around and do this whole bit like that. Take this and stow it. Make sure it's another one of those delicate little sort of, it's an L-shaped ball joint, so just make sure you don't twist it in a unnatural direction. In a direction some people refer to as unnatural. Flip this up, bring it around, start kind of collapsing these bits. They don't really have a definite position, but they tend to just kind of go like that. We do want to flip this up if we're going to be complete about this transformation. So that comes up out of the way. And then this stows inside here. We have to kind of cross them over each other because the wing has to come over here. Now this is the wing with a hole, so it goes onto a tab there. And then this bit, we don't want to stress that little peg back there too much, but it does tab into the wing. And then we rotate the leg up. And just to finish this leg, we're going to go ahead and put this flap into position. We're going to do this leg, flipping it around, watching this to keep it from binding. Same story here. We're just going to straighten the foot out a little bit. Bend this to give us leverage to rotate the other joint there. Bring this around. Rotate the sole of the foot around like that. So you see on this side, this flap here, this cockpit flap, is on the same piece as this bit. And they did plan it so it works out, but it is asymmetrical. The legs are different from each other. Your main goal here is to kind of have this flush on this side, so make sure you fold that in far enough. This goes under this. It tabs in. There we go. And this part comes down and tabs in. And then we rotate the leg like that. Do the piece here. Now we're about ready to stick him on his feet. So there he is on his feet. You can straighten the legs up, put the flaps in place. You do want to separate this. You'll find this one side comes easier because it's not actually tabbed in to there. But it was really challenging sometimes, and I didn't bring my screwdriver, my pocket knife, so it's going to be hard to separate this. Let's see if we can get some leverage this way. There we go. This comes down. And there's like a little, you see the little armature. So it goes from that position to that position. Vehicle mode, robot mode. Go ahead and get rid of the stand here. And robot mode. And then this whole thing, it's got a ratcheted ab crunch, so that's what you're hearing there. And then this like double joint, it'll tend to pull the ab crunch back out. But your goal is just to transit this forward. So it's there. And then we can go ahead and rotate these and tab them back together in preparation for robot mode. Still out of the way at least. I turned the legs around the wrong way. Or no, we haven't done the waist yet, that's why. I was like, I had it right. All right, and then we can do these jobbies here. They flip down, they flip over, and then they slot inside there. Like that. We can flip this up into position, but don't tab it all the way quite yet. So we have room to open those flaps better. Before we tab everything in, we should get the head out while we have a chance. It'll be a little tricky to get this started. If you open these a little bit, you can get a little more of a purchase to pry that loose. But the head flips out, straighten the antenna, close this flap and seal it. Now we're about ready to put the backpack on. Tab the backpack and bring it down. Just not tabbing the whole front of it just yet. We just want a little, we still want to be able to see that hole for now so that these come down all the way. Spread the arms out. Oh yeah, close these things down. This is the one time you actually want these to go down. Spread the arms out, and when they're getting a little further out, you start just kind of sliding them up the track there. So they go all the way. Make sure that this doesn't get, this will get caught like that. So just make sure it doesn't. Go all the way up. It tends to rotate the actual arm joint a little bit when you fiddle with this, but you're just trying to get it to slide up the post inside there. Come on now. It's hard to get that angle. Come here, you. Because this is a rotation joint, you can't really torque that die cast part very much. But you're just trying to get it to slide up the post so that you can bring it all the way out like this. There we go. And then we can bring out the chest piece and settle it into position. We can close these things. We can start situating the arms. They go like this with the flap closing. Collapse that. Bring this up, close the flap, rotate, slide up. We can bring out the hand. Excuse me for a minute. Let me borrow one of these lights here. It's amazing the things that'll happen when I transform one of these figures at arm's length out in front of me that never ever happens when I'm actually doing it for fun instead of for profit. You flip up this little flap. You flip this open. When you collapse this, you want to make sure that this little flap ends up going inside. So it goes inside to make room for the joint. See, now this can go over top. If you don't do that, there won't be room for that to go over top. All right. So we're going to pretend to flip the hand out on this one. I'm going to open up this bit. I'm going to make sure that this flap ends up inside, kind of following the armature as you close it up. Otherwise it'll be in the way. And this closes like that. Maybe arrange his hand a little bit. Arrange that flap a little bit. And we'll put the gun hand back on. I like to plug this in fairly loosely. You can plug it in there and then you can have a lot of trouble getting it back out again. So keep that in mind. And just kind of arrange the backpack a little bit. He does, and I didn't get into it very much, but you do have to collapse this now that everything else is done. It can be a little scary and tricky, but you want it to go all the way down. And you want these side flaps. Remember, squeeze them a little bit so that they don't come untabbed from that armature. So don't flex them outward. Squeeze them inward. And this transitions up. There we go. He apparently has, I didn't try taking it apart, but each of the nacelles has a battery compartment. And I don't know if there's a button to turn it on. I didn't really get into it. Maybe this is a button. It's hard to tell, but engine lights basically. And then the head has like a place where you can put a button cell. And again, no evidence of an actual button to turn it on and off. Might be the eye. I don't really get into that very much because it's hard to track down the lights, and then you got to worry about the batteries leaking when you have it in display. It's funny though, because that cheap figure that, well, not too cheap, but that Zeta's first draft that they sold to Mechanical Alliance of their Blitzwing actually came with the head battery installed, so you can turn the eyes on that thing immediately. If you follow me at Locals, you've already seen that video, and I turned on the headlights, but it's kind of hard to see them. Anyway, this was a pretty small live stream that I spent 40 minutes on. Anyway, everyone have a nice day, nice weekend. This weekend I'll be shooting. decided to change up the order, but I'll be shooting Big Firebird Toys Calavinka. Was just a made up little mech. It's not very complicated, but it's a neat little figure. And YouTube will receive the Mechanical Alliance Thunder Warrior video on Sunday. Calavinka will go to locals, and then I don't know what I'm actually taking pictures of the following Sunday because I don't have anything in hand. But I'll think of something, or maybe something will show up before then. I know I have on the way, and should be pretty close at this point, is Kang Toys Firmament, the bird. So maybe I'll be shooting that in a couple of weeks. And I also have the Devil Saviors Overload, the hips of their big Troublemaker combiner. So that's shipped, but is still probably 2 or 3 weeks out. So maybe it'll be in time for the next round. And then maybe I'll shoot that Death Star Darth Vader that I talked about in the comments in the community. That's it. Have a nice day.